5, 4, 3, 2. This is the commentary for the Curacao 2015 dive video, and it's located off the coast of South America between Aruba and Bonaire, as you can see on the map there. And most of the dive sites are on the west side of the island here. And here we are landing in Aruba first. I did not shoot video of the landing in Curacao, so this will have to do. And here's the Southwest Airlines jet engine at the bottom half of the frame, landing in Aruba, which is kind of interesting. I like this footage. I thought it would be useful to put it here, so I had a little fun with the opening titles. This was shot on an iPhone 6 Plus. Most of the footage that's in this video is on the GoPro camera at the narrow setting, and there's some lower quality 720 progressive video on the underwater footage that was shot with an Intova camera, but very little of that was used, and it's lower quality, as I was saying. So here, this illustrates the distortion of the wide setting on the GoPro Hero camera. And I used very little of this. I just decided to use a couple of shots that I thought were interesting at the beginning here. You can see on the edges of the frame it's distorted and it kind of bounces a little bit. But I shot a considerable amount of footage, perhaps an hour's worth, and I didn't really like any of the video because it had this kind of distortion to it. Shots like this are actually okay as we kind of wander around the top of the reef here. This is probably 20 feet of water. And here's the last shot that I used, kind of looking up at a few of the divers on the wall there. And we'll descend down here. And this shot is the gnome, or the marker for the Caribbean Sea Sports reef at the Marriott. And here's a rope marker for the reef. It's either a property line or a reef marker, and it goes all the way down into the abyss down there. And basically what we do is we follow it to the edge here, and about in this area is probably 20-25 feet as we get to the edge here, and it just drops off into, you know, over 100 feet here. And then looking on the side here, you can see the definite cliff drop off in the sand anyway, the angle. And here are some Sargent's major fish, a school of them, and you can see, based on what I've seen of them, they look more like staff sergeants or gunnery sergeants more than Sargent's major, but never mind. And here's some of these purple fish, or violet fish, with a green sort of bottom area. Those are chromies, I believe. I was not able to identify them more specifically than that. That's the kind of fish that you would have in a aquarium, probably not quite so big, but generally that's the kind of fish they appear to be. And this is kind of looking down the slope of the wall, and here's a bright orange, yellowish reef sponge, basically. And it would feel exactly like a sponge if you happen to bump into it. But I just happened to observe this, and it kind of stuck out because of the contrast in color with the rest of the reef here. Here's another one. They just grow randomly in a section that might be habitable or healthy for that kind of thing to survive. These are a couple of tube sponges sticking up. Looks like one of them fell over there at the bottom of the frame there. Some brain coral and another orange reef sponge. And here's some reddish and some purple or violet colored fish. These are chromies, as I was saying earlier. And there's the dive master on the left side of the frame there, just out of frame. The color comes out pretty good, and this is pretty good, pretty accurate color for the GoPro with the red lens filter. These are reddish chromies fish, a whole school of them here. Kind of a good reproduction of the color that you would see if you were down there. This is probably 25, 30 feet down. Here's a rainbow-colored fish, kind of like a parrotfish, though I'm not sure. I didn't get long enough footage to look at that. So here's a stonefish, which you can see contrasted with the background or blending into the background, and you can see the gills or the on the back there dilating as it breathes. Almost looks like a pair of eyes looking up at you. And I got very close to it, and then eventually it moved away so you could see the fins there, and then it moves on to the next thing and just sort of sits there, and then it blends into the background. This is a French angelfish with the yellow eyelids and the yellow spots on the side and the fin on top there. And here's another kind of angelfish with some different coloring on it. They don't seem to hold still very well for the camera, and they don't really have any awareness or care about you trying to take a nice picture of them. They're just going about their business. Here's a spotted drumfish just sort of swimming around in a circle right here. Kind of an interesting looking pattern on their fin, and a fin that kind of sticks up instead of just back. And this is an interesting looking fish, a striped burrfish with these vertical fins that are kind of wagging like a little puppy would wag their tail. And these fish have these very large eyes and a kind of cartoon face. And they were kind of like puppies, the fish equivalent of puppies, I guess. They were just kind of hanging around here, and got a couple of good shots of them. They're pretty common. I see a lot of smaller ones rather than these larger ones. These are as large as a thigh or something, human thigh. And these are some violet fish. These are probably chromies or something like that. Whole school of them. A lot of these kind of fish are very common on the dives that I took down there. Now I've got one of 7 moray eels. This one is a spotted eel that's white with black spots on it. You can see a little fish stuck on its the side of its face there below the eye, and it's just sort of stretching its jaw, hoping something will get there. And I've got a selfie stick on this where I can kind of shove the camera as close to the eel as I can. And this particular eel, same kind of spotted eel, is kind of just exercising its jaw, and it kind of it's like it's licking its lips or salivating at the sight of any fish that might come by. And this one coughs briefly, as you can see there, just sort of sitting there. And this is a green eel, and it was wound up in the wall here and sticking its head sort of pointed down, and I didn't find anything that I could anchor myself to, but I got the selfie stick kind of in its face as much as I could down there to get a good close shot. There was a guy to my right and below me who I wanted to let him get some footage, so I kind of stepped back here. You can see his light. He's kind of in the upper right there. You can see his selfie stick. And then there's a lionfish in the background there at the top of the frame that just moved out, which I did not notice as I approached it, so I moved away later on once I did spot it. But pretty good shot of the eel there. And here's another spotted eel, but this one is a eel that's in motion, which I captured quite well. It's like a little snake kind of moving around. And it kind of pokes its head out of the reef here as it went through the little tiny swim through for it. And sort of at the bottom of the frame here, below and behind me, is another diver with a GoPro camera with a light on it. And the eel appears to see its reflection in the case and lunges at it here, as you can see in just a moment here. He's got it on a selfie stick as well. This is probably 20 feet, and I'm hovering above this person so that he can get some footage as well. And then the eel moves on, kind of slinks its way around. Here's a black eel sort of poking its head out and just sort of flexing its jaw, peering at food here. And this particular one, you'll notice here in a moment or two that it starts twitching. The top fin kind of twitches like it's ready to flex. It's kind of flexing its muscle, ready to take on whatever prey approaches. And here's another spotted eel, and this one's kind of got its head cocked, like it's going to lunge at something. It's sort of flexing its jaw, just relaxing and breathing. This is the Intova camera, which is the lower resolution. You can definitely tell the contrast as I switch back and forth between the types of footage. And here's one at the edge of the reef, just sticking its jaw out with these chromas, or whatever kind of fish they are in the chromies, in the background, and they kind of swim around and peer at it and realize that it's probably not very friendly, and then they move on. And here's a turtle. There were 2 or 3 turtles that I encountered, and I connected the shots to make a kind of composite video. And it's just sort of sitting there, and it's posing for my camera. And this is the turtle as well, or maybe it's a different turtle on a different dive, different day. And this is the Intova camera, which it electronically adds back the red, which is missing, but the footage, at least this footage, for example, looks very drab, and it doesn't show any of the color. So the Intova is a lower resolution, and it's not a particularly good camera. I think it's a good starter camera, so you can kind of get used to how you would film things, but the GoPro, I think, is just about right. But the only flaw I can see in the GoPro is that the video is not quite bright enough, and if you were to go deeper and deeper, the footage just isn't quite as good as it could be, unless you bought a much more expensive professional camera. And here you can kind of see you can compare the size with a diver sort of to the left and out of the frame there, as this turtle moves on toward the west. This is probably going toward Aruba. And here's a cute little flounder that I observed. I let the video run so that you can see the activity of the flounder as it changes into its background and becomes camouflaged. And you can see the fin there on the top side, and you can see the 2 eyes that are sort of to the right. And as I said, I just let the video run so you can sort of see what how it changes into its background, and just kind of leaving it undisturbed, trying to observe nature as it is. You can see it change into the background there, just sort of sitting there. It's about the size of like a longer dinner plate or platter. You might see the eye moving around there as it's sort of moving around, then it moves off there, and then I caught up with it a little bit later to kind of get some more transformation footage. You can see it slink along quietly, and then it moves over a sort of reef rock, and then it transforms itself into the background there. Does a pretty good job. If you were to just glance at it, you wouldn't know it was there. And then here, as it moves off, moves into a sandy lower area of the reef here, you can see that it blends in with the light-colored sand, and then it disappears again. Just a very interesting fish to observe. You can see there, it's almost complete. It's basically gone. It's now blended in. So a couple of the dives were next to cliffs, which were next to golf courses. So there were plenty of stray golf balls in the reef here, kind of joining in and adding to it. And we kind of finished the video with this GoPro footage looking up and then looking back at the divers. And I want to thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it.